make a motion to approve the minutes for November 20th, 2017.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Support.
The second, roll call vote. Ken Jackson.
Abstain?
Mike Orlowski.
Yes.
Linda Bello.
Abstain.
Dominic Romano. Oh, Dominic's not here tonight. Chairman, or Commissioner Lanigan.
Yes.
And I too vote yes. So with that, we'll move on to public hearings. There are none tonight. So we're going to move into discussion. We'll be discussing 3 chapters of the zoning ordinance update. And I believe there are some people with questions, comments on a couple of these issues. The way I think we're going to handle this is I will have Patrick correct me if anything seems out of line here. I'll have you come up, present a little bit on each topic as we come to it. Then if anybody from the public wishes to speak, we'll have them come up and speak for a couple minutes. And then we can ask questions and discuss from up here as necessary. Since this is a discussion, not a public hearing, and a little more casual than normal, but I do want to, keep things in line.
Sure. First item we're going to be discussing this evening is chickens, animals, and fowl. Currently, the ordinance does not allow for the keeping of chickens in the community. During the steering committee meetings on the zoning ordinance update, this topic did come up, and the general discussion or the general feeling at the time was that they didn't feel the need to add chickens as an allowable use in a residential district. However, I know that there are several members of the community that are very interested in this topic, and I thought tonight would be a very good opportunity for them to present their input on this particular topic and whether or not it was something that the Planning and Zoning Commission wished to amend as part of the new zoning ordinance update. And with that, I'll let anybody from the public who wants to speak come up and address this topic.
Okay. This isn't an official public hearing, so I'm not going to have anybody be sworn in. We don't have a court reporter here taking, recording the proceedings as we normally do. But if you want to speak on the topic of backyard chickens, feel free to come up to the mic, state your name and address, just so we have that. And then, not going to limit anybody to time at this point, but just try to keep in mind that other people may want to speak, and it's not necessary to repeat what other people have said. If you want to come up and express your support of what someone else said, please do that too, so we know. Whether you're for or against, this is a chance to discuss, and then we'll move into comments from up here, questions for people who have spoken. Just want to see what the interest is. So on animals and chickens, is there anybody that wishes to speak at this time? Yeah, please, feel free. Yeah, please. So be heard on recording.
My name is Katie, last name Laniga. I am at 1510 South Oakland Avenue here in Villa Park. I was the kind of initiator of starting the Villa Park Backyard Chicken petition. Our family desires to have chickens. We believe that they're really educational for our children, for us, for our family. They provide a great way of recycling our food. It eliminates a lot of waste for our household. They produce great, healthy, organic eggs. They have kept our backyard free or have eliminated a portion of insects and pests, and that allowed us to not use chemicals on our backyard, on the grass, which we thought was really beneficial to the town, to the world, keeping it green, keeping it healthy. I started this petition a couple weeks ago. I'm going to say 8 weeks ago, maybe 6. The response through Facebook and through local companies has been overwhelming. We've had a lot of support, very few questions or concerns, and those questions have been specifically about roosters, and we do not desire to have roosters, specifically hens. I started an online petition. I have 179 signatures there. And then we also had a petition at the Pioneer store, and we had a total of 46 petition signatures there. So over 200 signatures, and that was within a few short weeks. We also started the Facebook group. We have 146 followers there, and again, the support from other towns has been, and our town alone. Those petitions, I asked that they were only from Villa Park, so those signatures are from residents of our town. The Facebook page was open to anybody, and just to hear how they have gone through, if there's been any pushback, or a couple of the towns that have approved it, if there's been any issues with complaints, neighbors, not keeping up the coop, like smelling or things like that, and there has not been, from what through the conversations that I've had. Let's see, what else do I have in here? I have the petition as I wrote it, if you're interested in seeing that. Would you like me to bring that up? Yeah, quite a few of them. So let me grab my stack. On the petition. A fun fact that I saw while kind of going through this was that back in the 1920s, when Villa Park first came to be, that the buyers of land were in fact given the options of 20 apple trees or 200 baby chicks. So I thought that was really just appropriate and kind of made me laugh.
Yeah, I've seen that before.
Like a full circle, we're kind of going back to the roots and going back to what the initial draw of Villa Park was, which is this kind of country style living and supporting families and healthy lifestyle. I mean, I know that they just hit that reward of, being one of the most desirable towns to live in, and with the Prairie Path and just being desirable to young families. I think that's really important, and backyard chickens is becoming extremely popular and desirable with families like my own. These are my two kiddos here, Huxley and Soraya, who absolutely love their chickens, and again have learned a ton through it. Also, one of the benefits of chickens that they're seeing is that it's a great source of therapy. Kids with autism are finding ways to connect through animals. Patients with dementia and other brain disorders, because chickens are always moving around and they're very, stimulating and kind of fun to watch. They have their pecking order, their own social, way that they move and do things, which is so very true. And we have personally seen that with our kids, it being very therapeutic. Giving them an outlet after school, coming home, hanging out with the chickens, playing with them, petting them, just engaging with them, opposed to video games, iPad. Don't get me wrong, they love those things too, but it's another option for them to get out and to be active. Just want to make sure that I'm crossing all of my bases here. I have the written petition, all the signatures here. And then I also have a couple examples of what other towns have passed. So I have Downers Grove, their code, their ordinance, and how they did it. I have Lake Bluff did a pilot program in October of this year. So I have kind of what they're doing. And this just kind of goes through how many chickens they allow, and then what the parameters are, how many feet it needs to be away from your neighbor's house, or how many square feet you need in a coop, just going through all those details. And so I just printed that out and thought it might be helpful, or a starting point should there be any interest in moving this along. Would you like to see those?
Sure.
So I have 3 examples. I have Downers Grove, I have that pilot one, and then I do have one other town in here, which is Naperville.
Okay.
And I think I will pass it on.
Okay, if you think of something else, we're going to be a little bit free form here, so, feel free to raise your hand or speak up when we move on.
Okay,
Okay,
thank you.
thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak on this topic at this time?
Good evening, everyone. Rich Pajoli, 550 South Princeton. I've known you guys for probably many, many years. I agree with everything that you said. I also believe that we put bicycle helmets on our kids, protect them, car seats. So there's other reasons to protect our kids from this too. 96, they started using GMOs. I'm not going to debate about this, but GMOs in feed for chickens. Now, since 99, there has been a 55% increase in Alzheimer's. All right. ADHD in children has increased dramatically. Let me see. Illinois was, this is an old figure, 6.3 to 9% over a few years. I don't have for a 20-year span. It just goes on. There's all sorts of things. You have celiac incidences since 90 till 2010 have gone up, looks like 200%. Liver, bile duct cancer has gone up. Diabetes has gone up. Everything's gone up over the years. Glyphosate used in the feed also. Anything genetically modified is not good for you. Now you go to the store and you see organic or non-GMO, but and I wish I had it in front of me, there's actually something that has to be put on there. It states it's a non-GMO something product. If you read non-GMO, you're not sure if you're going to get that. If it's organic, you're not positive. But it does have this, and I wish I had it with me. I must have left it at home. I don't have it with me at all. And I think, if I remember correctly, the 14th Amendment did state that we have the right to sustainability, which would entitle us to have chickens. We can have eggs coming from those chickens. So, but I'm not going to go through all of that other stuff. But and I know the U.S. did sign. Now, this is a voluntary guideline in 2004. This is through the American Public Health Association. It's basically food security. Exists with all people. They want to have sufficient, safe, nutritious food to meet dietary needs of all of us. Now, this went through multiple countries. It's very long. I'm not going to get into this whole thing. You guys can look it up. I'm not going to take up your whole time. But it does urge the public health community to increase, engage food and system issues, educate policymakers, food industry, media, public health, to help our children stay healthy and safe. We do it all the time with everything else. You know, why do we not want to have the best food for our kids? And eggs is just a start from them. And now you can use these chickens down the road, and you can have those for whatever meal. We're not going to have chickens every day that we're going to barbecue or rotisserie because we just won't have enough. But you know, maybe once a year, you may have to replace a bird. You know, it's up to you. Whatever you want. It would be great if we're actually able to include more. I mean, ducks are good too. Any other fowl would be awesome. I don't know when anybody else has ideas with that. Or other towns. I don't know if other towns have had ducks or anything included with chickens. I don't know. I have not looked that up. So, but I know with our health problems right now, this would be something, a start for this town. Especially if you want to be 28th in the country, show them that you care about their health. It makes a big difference. All right, thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak on this topic? Please.
My name is Brian War, 1001 South Rand Road. I am a lifelong Villa Park resident. You know, my previous two people who spoke pretty much, mentioned everything they could. But an aspect I want to add to it, I actually went to North School. I was in 4th grade. We actually hatched chickens in our classroom, And at the end of the summer, I was able to bring home 4 chickens and raise them. You know, they were pets to me. They were like a cat or a dog. You know, wake up every morning, I'd let them outside, feed them, clean them, play with them. You know, it was a great summer. And that's when started my love for chickens and animals and the outdoors. You know, unfortunately, you know, the village found out we had to get rid of them after 5 months. But, you know, it was a learning experience. I liked it a lot. You know, they're more than just animals for, like, you know, eggs and meat. They're pets, you know. Like you were saying, I was outside every summer playing with them. I wasn't inside playing video games or watching TV. The neighborhood's kids would come over. They'd play with the chickens. They learned about chickens. You know, I have 2 daughters now, you know, 4 and 2. I want to teach them. I want them to learn love the outdoors, enjoy poultry and stuff like that. So that'd be nice, you know. Different aspect of that. It's not meat and eggs. It's like pets. You learn the outdoors. You play with them. So, you know, it'd be nice if Villa Park would allow that.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak at this time? Oh, please.
I'm Angie Rojek. I actually own Pioneer Garden and Feed. We had the petition at our store, and I can verify that we had a lot of people that were really interested, a lot of people that wanted a sign that actually didn't live in Villa Park, so I didn't let them. But a lot of towns around us do allow chickens. I know that because we sell chicken food at Pioneer Garden. I can tell you we go through about 500 to 700 pounds of chicken food a week for our customers. There's a lot of chickens in the area. Some of the towns that she mentioned, also I don't know if you know, but Cook County, you can have them everywhere. They have chicken walks in Chicago, like how we have garden walks and house walks. You can go to different chicken coops and visit them. A lot of people come from Oak Park, River Forest, that area, to come and get their chicken food from us. I think the biggest thing is the roosters. And a lot of people don't know, but you don't have to have a rooster to have eggs. They lay eggs without a rooster, so you can not have roosters. And I think that's a fine rule to have. No one wants to be woken up by a rooster. I think that's fine. And limit the amount of chickens that you can have. But what I wanted to touch on, what you said, was I can tell from the people that buy the food from us that people care about their chickens. They take care of them. They don't want them eaten by hawks and coyotes and stuff, so they protect them. You know what I mean? They take care of them. They keep them clean. They're like pets, a lot of them. Most people don't eat them. Some people do, and we eat chicken. That's their, what they want to do. Great for kids. Just the kids come in, a lot of them hatch baby chickens at school, and then they bring them to our store because they don't know what to do with them. So they come in with their chickens, and the kids always want to keep them, but a lot of the towns don't let them. So we try and help them find other homes for them. So I just wanted to kind of let you know, just from our perspective of selling chicken food, how much people care about them and take care of them. I think that's the biggest concern that people have. They care like them as pets. So, thanks.
Back here in the corner, you want to speak?
The wife insisted that I go to her holiday party. So, honey, I'd like to go to this village meeting after you go to this holiday party.
Go sometimes.
I'm Steve Gwynn, guys. I'm the owner of Keyway Lock-In Security Company. We're a locksmith company located directly across the street from the Harley-Davidson on North Avenue. Anybody needs keys, please come over and see us. We usually cut them right. Okay. So I've lived in the village for about 3 years now. Are any of you guys small business owners? Okay. It is challenging. It is the most endearing undertaking I have ever taken in my life. Managing employees, payroll, finance, trying to keep the bills paid, trying to keep the doors open, so on and so forth. Okay. Our village has a very aggressive signage ordinance. We had a graphic designer, I'll show you. Pass it amongst yourselves. We had a graphic designer actually do a design for us for making the building really stand out if you are looking for a locksmith. Right now, it is very difficult for legal locksmiths to get found. Google charges us roughly about $20 to $25 per click, and they also allow a host of unlicensed companies to advertise on their sites. This makes it very, very difficult for brick and mortar businesses such as myself to be found. It also makes it very difficult for us to compete, and it's part of the reason why you don't see the number of locksmith shops per se that you used to in years past. Before it was Ace Hardware, Home Depot, Menards, places like this that kind of drove the brick and mortar locksmith to be sort of a recluse and go into basically working out of their home. Okay. We're a legitimate locksmith company. We're a licensed locksmith agency. We don't only assist people with lockouts and so on and so forth, but we make transponder keys for cars, roughly at about a third of the cost of most dealerships. We are very, very competitive. We used to rent the billboard that is directly above our store. And for a while, if you drove down North Avenue, you saw a big sign on the building that said chip keys starting at $15.99 with a big arrow pointing right down at our store, and that was fantastic for our traffic. It is insustainable cost-wise. We've tried to work with the owner of the sign. We made an offer that was very fair to extend the lease on the sign, and he didn't feel that that lease was, or our offer was fair, and chose to actually let the sign sit vacant for an entire year. And then, of course, yesterday, the day before I was coming in here, who comes knocking on the door saying, hey, do you want to rent our sign again? Says, well, I'm kind of looking into a longer term solution. Traffic-wise, we have more than 20,000 people, 20,000 vehicles pass our shop location going east and westbound traffic-wise. The best use of our dollars would be into some sort of permanent advertising utilizing the building, be it a permanent, what you call a permanent banner or some sort of vinyl wrap on the building, but something to make us actually stand out, and it's actually be good for the community. I had a lady come in about 3 days ago who had got locked out. She asked me, how much would you guys have charged me to let me in the house? I said, well, what time was it? She says, it's about 6:30 in the evening. I said, something like that, run you about $95. She pulled a receipt out from someone that she had found on Google. The receipt had no address on it, no telephone number, and they charged her north of $300 and demanded cash. So it is of great, I won't say it's of great urgency, but it would help us a lot if we could actually utilize our building for better advertising and to be found in the community. The signage ordinance is up for review right now. Patrick knows me very well because we've had numerous discussions about the signage ordinance, and I think that the businesses in the community, I think we're able to police ourselves to a certain extent. Something distasteful, obscene, or something like that should obviously not be allowed in the village. I'm a resident of the village myself. I don't want to see anything crazy going on, nor do I want to see the village look like an amusement park either. But I think there is a happy medium, and if we could just maybe get some input of some of the local business owners, because that is who these ordinances actually affect the most, I think that would be awesome. All right.
Just so you know, I didn't want to cut you off. We are talking about chickens at this point.
Oh.
But no, you were already up.
Sorry,
No,
guys.
no. Please don't apologize. I could have.
I didn't mean to call it the chickens. I like chickens.
We are gonna get to the signs,
Rather
and,
than
and I won't make you speak again. But
Okay.
I didn't want to cut you off, and
said holiday party.
yeah.
I'm sorry.
Hey,
All right.
we've all been there, right?
All right, I'll have a seat and let us get back to
Yeah,
the chickens.
and I will make you speak again. We've taken and we'll see if anybody else, and we're having people speak on one topic at a time, and then.
I'm really sorry.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
Okay, I'll sit in the back.
Yeah. So, anybody else wishing to speak on chickens at this time? I will.
Yeah. My name's Tim Lanninga, father of these two and husband of Katie. Live at 1510 South Oakland Avenue, Villa Park. I just want to make sure that people understand that chickens are a little scary at first because you don't know what they do. I mean, we're not farmers, but I kind of got into this with the want of a chicken and kind of learn as we go. I think a lot of people are uncertain of, or afraid of the unknown, and that was kind of what I did too. We all heard the joke, why the chicken crossed the road, right? A lot of different ways to do it, right? But the chickens don't cross the road because they're scared. They're also they're chicken, so if they are let out inside of your yard, outside of the run, as you would call it, they only go a certain distance away from of where they live. So they stay usually in your yard, stay close to your house. They stay safe and protected by what they know, their surroundings. From my experience, they've gone from the side yard to our neighbor's yard, which we had a really good relationship with them, and it's almost, they have vocalized to me that they see the girls in their backyard, and they oh, look, the girls are in the backyard, which is all the chickens that they see. Anytime that I'm outside in the front yard and people walk past our house, in the beginning, unfortunately, we were trying to keep the chickens kind of contained and not visible. But every once in a while, they'd be in the front yard, and people would walk by and say, do you have the chickens? Always interested, always kind of curious, and always excited to see what's walking around or what's happening. So the feedback I ever have gotten was positive, and these are people that live probably half a mile away from our house because we have a nice loop that people walk. I'm like, where do you live? And they're like, oh, way down there. And I'm like, but I'm the chicken guy, and that's okay, and they enjoy that. And again, I just want to say, like, great positive experience. I've never had any complaints. We share our eggs with our neighbors, and they've always seemed to appreciate it. And I guess that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak on chickens at this time? Yes. Rich, you had something to add?
Yeah, I just want to there's so much information out there. As you're rattling through stuff, I just want to make sure. The biggest thing was about the feed. Everything with the GMOs and stuff. It's all about the feed that they give these. And then I want to make sure that this stuff that we have is actually fed properly, healthy. The other thing, if it does pass, there should be enough of us in town here. And I know my girlfriend, for one, is from Michigan. She knows a ton about this stuff. We can all help each other with coops. We can help each other with what to do, information. I mean, all sorts of stuff. We can bounce off each other. I know that there's enough people in town here that want this that I think are going to come together and be able to help each other build something, help each other with the best feed, with what Pioneer would have. It's great for the kids. I know we've had pheasants on and off for a little bit for dog training at our house, and we've had them for Thanksgiving. After we did a little training with them. So the kids were very excited to see these and to see how these animals are, because nobody sees this unless you go to a farm somewhere or you go to the zoo. So I think this is something good for kids to see how they grow, just like they said. We didn't have any complaints from neighbors. We only had for a short time. But no complaints. They never got out, clipped their wings because, of course, they're different than chickens. But it was a great thing for these kids to see. So and everybody was excited. Every time they come over, they're like, oh, where are they? Where are the pheasants? And they wanted to see them. So I think the same thing with chicken. It's a good educational thing for kids. And plus gets us back to our roots where we came from a long time ago. We should be able to have fresh eggs. At least it's a start. So, all right, thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, seeing no one else wishing to speak at this time, I guess discussion here from the commission. Any questions, thoughts? I guess let me start a little bit here. I was on the steering committee, as was Mike, for the zoning ordinance update, and I know the topic of backyard chickens, it's a common term, I guess, that always have to be in your backyard, but chickens came up there, and the steering committee, I'm trying to remember the exact breakdown, I think we had, is it 3 or 4 members of the village board, we had 3 members of the planning and zoning commission, we had 3 or 4 business owners, citizens. I think the general consensus of them at the time was that, at least from an enforcement standpoint, as a village, we probably weren't equipped to deal with it. I don't know how everybody up here feels. I don't know how the village as a whole feels. I hear what's come out here today. I know it's a question that came up early. I've been on the commission for almost 10 years now. In the first year or 2 I was on, we had similar petition, not a petition, but a request from some people. I believe they were new to the community, backyard chickens, and at that time, there wasn't enough. There weren't enough people on the commission at that time that were in favor of the idea. It's one of those topics that I'm always on the fence, the chicken wire fence, on because because I grew up in a rural area, and I do understand the benefits, but I do understand the potential complications and potential enforcement issues on a village that has as many small lots as we do. So I guess that's where I'm at on it.
I know absolutely nothing about chickens. Do they sit in their coop during the day? They roam at day? They sit in the coop at night? I mean, how do you protect them from coyotes? And how do you keep them in your yard? And either that or talk so I can hear you.
Okay. So they have a coop and then they have a run, which is all enclosed. And so their coop is like a little mini house. And then their run is exposed to, grass or the yard. It's more free, fresh air.
Katie, could you go to the mic?
Kind of
The
like
sound guy just came out.
Oh, okay.
Cable commission guy, yes.
Sorry. So kind of like a dog run with a doghouse.
Exactly. We do then let our chickens out. It's in their best interest. And as I spoke before about our yard, to free range. So you see that term, free range, and that's, where they get their little grubs and their worms and seeds and exercise, and they, are happier. They have not hopped a fence. We have a 6-foot privacy fence. Tim talked about how they would be in the front yard. We are not closed in on one side, and so I think that it'd be a fair request that, if we were to close in our fence on that one side, and then they are completely enclosed to our backyard. They know to go when the sun starts setting and it's getting dark and predators might be coming out. They, on their own, go into their coop. And then we will go and close the run and kind of lock it up. But we, if some people won't even open up their run, they stay protected that entire time. And then there's really no way. There's ways of, protecting your coop from raccoons or, that would be the biggest threat in our area that we've seen.
Yeah, I got another squat. How does a child play with a chicken?
Raya?
I'm sorry, I'm just absolutely clueless when it comes to
You don't
this.
want to share? How do they play with the chicken? Oh my goodness, they run, they chase them, they catch them, they hold them, what else do you do with them? They pet them. Apparently they've jumped on the trampoline. Yeah, try chasing a chicken. It's fun. They gather the eggs. Yep, so the eggs are in a little nesting box. The kids get to go outside, lift up a nesting box. It's a great surprise every single time that we see these beautiful multicolored eggs. And I mean, my goodness, I'm trying to think, how do you not play with a chicken? Because it's just so normal to us.
I mean, because I can think of ways to play with a dog or a cat, I just have no clue.
Sure. So, you know, the picture that I have on Facebook is of my daughter Soraya holding up a piece of food, and she's, you know, telling certain chickens, patient, be patient, and then the other, okay, you know, Minty, you can. So they feed them. They, you know, oh, are you done with your strawberries? Go scrape your plate to the chickens, and.
So it's more interaction. than
It's interaction.
actual play.
Okay, yeah. It's not. They don't play fetch or anything like that.
I didn't think so.
We chase them. Yeah, they run. They catch them. They hold them.
Their presence in the yard. Like if I'm out there, I'm digging, they know that there's fresh mud, they're gonna go.
They turn our garden. I mean, yeah.
And they're certainly quieter than dogs.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Quieter
Yeah.
than dogs.
So you know where I live, and I know where you live. We have a pretty good idea. I live in the subdivision just south of the golf course, and I would not want to have chickens in my neighborhood. I wouldn't want your folks to have chickens in their neighborhood. They're getting closer. They get closer and closer. My neighborhood especially. I've got 3 houses right around me. What do you have in mind for distances? What are you thinking distances from people's houses? You've looked at more of these than I have, more ordinances than I have.
I believe.
Yeah, sorry.
In those ordinances that I shared, there were some that were 10 feet from. Does it say it in there? Is that
It
the
does say
specific
10
one?
feet.
10 feet from. I don't know if it was a property line or if
10
it
feet
was.
from the property line.
50.
50 downers.
Downers Grove has 50
Lake
feet
Bluff's
from
at
any
10 feet.
property line. Which would rule out 90-some percent of our city,
of our
our
city,
village,
yeah.
unfortunately, but.
Mhm.
So there's a huge online like groups with backyard chickens. They discuss a lot of things. So I was looking into this last summer. So they recommend one chicken or one hen requires a 2-foot by 2-foot space in a coop. So depending based off of that, you can design your coop, adjust it accordingly, or you can set the rule to how many chickens you can have. Just out of curiosity, like, what's the purpose of having the 50 feet away from property line? Just out of curiosity. I mean, you know, like you heard our like.
Why ask the question?
You personally may like the sound of a chicken. You may like this, not even think a chicken smells or whatever.
Okay.
But your neighbor may not feel that way.
Okay.
And it's just like we wouldn't let someone put a dog run
Right.
along their fence. A dog run has to be a certain distance away from a fence. Now, do people let their dog into their backyard and let it run around? Sure. But we have rules for all sorts of encroachments into setbacks because what your opinion of an aesthetic isn't the same as your neighbors. And we have to, like you said, we have to
Right.
find a compromise
Okay.
on all topics, whether it's a swing set or a gazebo or a chicken coop.
Okay.
Because we as a village do have fairly narrow lots. The vast majority, 90-some% of our lots are 50 feet wide.
Okay.
I actually, not that, several years back, someone had the chicken coop, if you want to call it that, about yay big with multiple chickens in it, in the corner of their property, abutting the train station, parking lot, and their neighbor's backyard. Their neighbor might not like the chicken there, and I actually reported that one because even if I wouldn't necessarily care, but is a bad place for a chicken coop. I mean, it was a poorly built chicken coop. It was not attractive.
Well,
The chickens were not well maintained, and it's at the front door of our village for anybody coming off of a train.
understandable. Yeah.
So that's why you have to have regulations, whether it's chicken coops or gazebos.
Interesting. I mean, I guess personally, and I mean, I don't know. I'm assuming everybody else. Like, we want to know like what's stopping us from passing this ordinance. You know, we can, I guess, come to a common ground. You know, we can like, you know, I mean, like I said, like you have an understanding, I have an understanding. Someone doesn't know really about chickens; they don't have understanding. So maybe we can discuss it a little further and like kind of come to a common ground. But I mean, you know, it's understandable if you want like a chicken coop that looks nice. You know, I guess that can be part of the ordinance. But I mean, like chickens don't really harm anybody. They don't bite like dogs. You know. They don't really harm. I mean, like all animals, like cats and dogs, you know, any pets like rabbits, they have the potential to carry disease. You know, you would treat it accordingly. If a chicken gets sick, you would treat it with medicine, like a dog or a cat. They would get rabies or something like that, or ticks.
Right.
You treat it accordingly. I mean, personally, I don't see any difference between a chicken or a dog or a cat or a bird that lives in their cage. You know, so.
Yeah, and I mean the truth is chickens generally fall into a category that for, let's call it a century, probably not a century, is livestock. Whether they are or not now, that's what's up for debate in communities all over the country, all over the world, is most cities at a point when people were moving from farms into cities, lots got smaller, towns got denser. They said, well, we don't need chickens, we don't need cows, we don't need horses. Cows, horses, and chickens aren't the same, and I could show you towns in Lake County where it's okay to have a horse, but you couldn't have a cow. So that's where we need to decide as a village where we are, and I mean that's what we're trying to do. We've got some questions up here.
I think the biggest thing about not allowing like livestock in people's properties was like not being kept clean and like harboring germs.
That's certainly part of it.
That's probably the biggest thing.
There's also noise. There's
Well,
all
like you
kinds
said,
of
like
factors.
roosters are the ones that make noises. Hens don't really make too much noise. They cluck a little bit here and there, but you're not going to hear it like a couple feet away. But I mean, chickens themselves are pretty clean. You know, they clean themselves. They pick the bugs off themselves. I mean, the biggest thing would be like cleaning their coops, making sure they're clean. So I mean, I guess that's the biggest concern. But I mean, like a dog and a cat, you pick up after them. You have litter boxes. You walk them. I mean, I have people who walk. You know, I live on a corner lot off Rand and Jackson, and I have people who walk their dogs all the time, and they don't pick up after their dogs. You know,
Right.
I find stuff all the time in my yard, so it's kind of like we're not really enforcing that much. So it's like, you know.
And then I did have a question that I didn't look at this ordinance, but the people that are here that are interested in hens, how many hens do you imagine? I mean, what's a number of hens? I know, like Rich, 5.
5 usually give you about a dozen a week.
Any other?
You have to have at least 3
Yeah.
there to survive. They keep each other warm. So the lowest amount is 3 to keep them sustained.
Okay, I'm just.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yes.
So in some of those ordinances, there was, you know, just like if we want to build a front porch on our house, we have to come to the village, bring our, you know, our land drawings and all of that. And so some of the towns had that. You would have to bring your plot of survey and show where you're going to place the chicken coop, show the dimensions of the chicken coop, whether you're building it or purchasing it on, you know, pre-made. And so that's kind of a way to regulate it, where we come to you, we show you the plan, and then it is approved, the placement and the number of chickens. Somebody mentioned the 2 by 2 square feet per chicken. And then I believe another town had possibly like a yearly inspection, or that the town had the right or whatever to come by and make sure that it was up to code.
Of the 3 ordinances that you presented to us, they were 10 feet from the property line. This is the house now, the chicken coop. 10 feet, 50 feet, and 200 feet from the property line. 50 feet from any property line would eliminate, what would you say, 90%, 95%?
Probably 90+%.
Yeah, maybe much of
Basically-
South Villa Park would be okay. A lot
Almost,
of it.
almost all of our R1 zone, our 2 zone lots are
50 to 60 feet, yeah.
handful of them are 60, some of them have been combined. Really, the only ones that are bigger than that are the R1 lots, which is the south, kind of the southeast part of town.
I could also, you know, I pulled up 3 that, you know, were kind of current. I would be willing to go back and find, you know, one of them's Lake Bluff.
That's 10 feet, yeah.
That was 10 feet. Which one was 200? Naperville?
Naperville, yeah.
Okay.
It's kind of limiting.
They actually allow you to keep 8 chickens, but they do have to be 200 feet.
Yeah.
No livestock shall be kept housed, maintained, or pastured within a distance of 200 feet of any occupied residence other than that of the owner. So that's not property line,
No,
but still,
that's different, yeah.
that's 200 feet. That's going to rule out
99 feet.
most of our
Yeah.
most of our lots too. That's a big one. I'm just looking at the numbers here. Naperville allows 8. Downers Grove no more than 4. Lake Bluff allows no more than 6, but if you have any, you're required to have 2, at least 2, which is interesting.
Well,
They have a
that
minimum.
follows the,
Yeah.
you know, they
But it's
need
just
to-
interesting that they have a minimum, the other 2 don't. So if you keep 1 chicken, you have to keep 2 in Lake Bluff.
Could you talk a little bit about approval of the neighbors?
We have,
And how you went about that and,
so our direct neighbor, we're on a corner, so we have one neighbor.
oh, that's right.
We told them off the bat, you know, we got chickens. If this is ever becomes an issue, we want you to come to us. And, you know, we've established a neighborly relationship with them. And then from there, it only opened the door to have other conversation with our other neighbors. They're all very, very interested. The other kids in our neighborhood love coming to our house and playing or engaging with the chickens. They love, I mean, it has opened our backyard to be more of a community, more friendly, and something to have conversation about. They're interesting. We've shared our eggs with our neighbors. They love them. We've not ever had a single complaint.
This may seem like an odd question, but it says here our code currently prohibits the keeping of chickens. So
That
how did
might
you get
be-
chickens if we don't allow them?
Oh, our code
Uh-huh.
for Villa Park.
Uh-huh.
So that's what spurred this, is that we have chickens. We were under the impression that the chickens were in conversation a couple of years ago when we got our chickens. And it was a poor assumption that it was going to pass and that it was already conversation. And we were told on multiple accounts, it might not be passed, or it maybe is, but it's going to be soon. And when I looked it up at that time, I don't remember if we really saw something specific for poultry. And again, maybe that was, you know, me not wanting to find, I don't, whatever. And then, what is his name? He works here at the village. Mick was driving through our neighborhood and saw one of our chickens. And he, you know, had a conversation with me, and he simply said, I love chickens. I helped my good buddy in Winfield build a chicken coop, but it's not allowed in Villa Park. And so that then got this going. I said, well, what do I do from here? And we had multiple conversations, and this is where he kind of brought me. He was gracious enough to let me have this conversation and not, you know, I initially had a ticket, and he withdrew the ticket and said, if you are willing to have this conversation with us and see where the interest is. He said, I know that they talked about it a while ago, and it was not passed, but perhaps there's more education and more knowledge and a little bit more interest, as it is rapidly growing, and it probably is significantly different than 2 years ago.
I don't live in Villa Park, but I live in Berkeley. And we have several people on our block that have chickens that I have babysat for. And walking through the neighborhood, and we have all different sized lots on our street, because it's an old town. You would never know from being in your own backyard or walking across the front of someone's yard that anybody has them. There's one of my neighbors, her house butts up to the village hall, and I mean, that would be the most dangerous place to keep your chickens, because if anything is wrong, they're going to notify you, because the village hall doesn't want a stink or noise or anything like that. She's probably had chickens for, and she has 3. I'm going to say 10 years, and there's never once been a complaint. And she's got a tiny yard. And then we have a neighbor, another one down the block, who is a homeschooler, and she uses this as an educational purpose for her children. And the neighbors around them have embraced it. She has a large yard, sort of like what Katie and Tim have. You cannot hear them, you cannot smell them. There's never been a complaint, except when she accidentally got a rooster, that left very quickly. And the complaint was from a neighbor on another block over, who happens to complain about everything. Well, when that rooster went, there were so many people that were sad. The owner wasn't sad because she did not want a rooster. But and I'm also on the board of the Berkeley Community Garden Club, and it has caused community. There are so many people that come together and have met each other through the community garden, through our beekeeping, through our chickens, and it's built a stronger community. And I see that happening in their little edge of the town. And it really, I have not, in the 10 years that I've been dealing with it, I have not seen or heard of a problem in our village.
I just want to say a few more things. Anybody would be more than welcome to come by and see our setup and have a better visual of what it looks like. So that's just an offer if you really were trying to wrap your mind around what it actually looks like. Also, I think maybe even meeting place in the middle would be a pilot program. So you know, 10 people can try it out. Their lots need to be approved for size, and then you guys see how it goes. See what the feedback is. See what the other neighbors say, and that way you're not jumping in and committing yourself to these annual inspections of chicken coops, and it's not so overwhelming. But maybe kind of get your toes wet and see how it goes over.
How big do you think your lot is? Do you know, roughly? I'm just curious, because
I think he said 50 by 100, but I'm yeah.
I would say it's wider than 50 feet. It's hard by 150.
Yes.
It's probably 80 by.
that's what.
Yeah.
That's my guess is that's why you haven't had any complaints. I mean, what I'm trying to wrap my head around is, I have a 50-foot wide, 190 feet deep lot with 3 feet chain link, 4 feet chain link fence, 3 foot chain link, 4 foot. Trying to imagine my neighbor here with with a half dozen, say 2 chickens, 3 chickens, and then my other 2 neighbors, both who have huge dogs. I'm trying to imagine what that might present. I mean, and I know that's not maybe not your scenario, but that is would be a pretty common scenario in the village as a whole.
2 things on that. We had a chocolate lab that lived wonderfully with our chickens. That was his disposition. That was his personality. I understand that. But also, I believe some of the other towns require a 6-foot privacy fence.
Okay.
So that would be my suggestion to that concern.
Okay.
I mean, a 4-foot chain link fence, I would think that the chicken probably could jump that. Or an eager dog.
When I was raising chickens, we had a 4-foot.
I was thinking the dog would come over after the chicken, probably. Is the way that's going to
Or
work.
drive the dog so
Even the
crazy
dog
they
that doesn't
nothing but
normally jump
bark
the
all
fence.
day.
So when I
That's
was
just the
raising chickens,
barking.
I had 4 chickens. They were about like maybe 5 months old when I got them. We have a 4-foot chain link fence around my parents' property. I mean, we have neighborhood cats who jump over all the time, but we never had an issue. You know, you can't leave them out at night, you put them away, keep them safe, but we never had any issues.
They don't want to escape. They want to be protected. They know that they're very vulnerable. So, you know, if it were my prediction, if it were to jump the fence and get stuck on the other side, it would be frantic and desperately want to come back and probably not do it again. So, I mean, again, I think a 6-foot privacy fence would be the best response.
With the towns that you guys brought up, or that she brought up, I think it's a case by case. Naperville's gonna have bigger lots than we do.
Like,
I mean,
I'm looking
it's gotta
here,
be case by case.
Downers Grove doesn't allow, I'm going to use the term free range because I like to say
Right.
free
I think
range
it all,
chicken.
it just depends
but
on,
Downers Grove does not allow free range chicken at all. They must be enclosed at all times.
right. I think that,
I do think that, I'm not positive, but I think enclosed did include a backyard.
Okay.
they know it's gotta be enclosed.
Well, this says, it says in a pen, coop, building, or other enclosure at all times. Is what Downers Grove says.
And I do know this is something to look into. I don't have the actual 14th Amendment in front of me. The right to grow your or raise your own food. It is the 14th Amendment, Section 1 states, all persons born naturalized, of course, U.S., citizen U.S., where they reside, no state shall make and enforce any law which privileges, immunities of citizens of the United States, shall deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process. Basically, what they're saying is, where the right to food protects the right of all human beings free from hunger, food insecurity, and malnutrition, which, of course, we have grocery stores. We have something to go to. But they're basically stating that it is our right to raise or grow our own food. Like I said, I do not have it in front of me. Everything, this is just basically short, lame, but that is something to look into also. And I think that if we look into this, or you guys look into this, it should be a case by case. I mean, if your lot's at 50 by 150, maybe you're only allowed 2 chickens. You know, I think I'm, what am I, 100 by 250 or 300? That could probably have 6 or 5. You know, plus there's a corner, so I can have things away from neighbors that would never, I'd be 100 foot away from all my neighbors, the way my lot's laid out. So, I mean, it just depends on a case by case, and like the pilot program, I think is a great idea. You know, get a handful of houses, and you could set standards for coops, you could set standards for what we have for lot size. I think that would be great to do for the community.
All right.
I was thinking, Jason, also, you know, the dogs and the chickens and that scenario. I've seen a number of instances where somebody gets a new pet. It's a cat or a dog, and the dogs are trying to get at each other. So
that's true too.
It's to the dog owners, I guess, dog owner's responsibility that they've got to maintain their pet, just like the chicken owners would need to maintain their pet. So
See, like for us, for the chickens,
I
I'd
gotta
want to
look
keep them
both ways
safe.
at it.
I'd want to keep them safe.
Mhm.
We have coyotes and foxes by us.
Yep.
Coyotes get in the yard all the time. My neighbor feeds these animals like crazy. She's got cat food laying all over the yard. So I've got coyotes every night coming through. So for me, if I had them, I definitely would have protection from whatever would come in that yard. So I have a 6-foot fence. I would have a better coop set up that things can't get in, or dig underneath too. So they're great for getting bugs out of your yard. Their waste is amazing for your garden. I know you guys sell.
We sell it.
You sell like great, and it's one of the
Sometimes it-
best things for your garden. I mean, compared to dog waste, compared to chicken waste, I mean, it's night and day. So it's very beneficial for your yard to have these. So I think we have to look at, or you guys would have to look at your lot size and how many you could have, and like you said, the fences, and how the coops should be put together.
Yeah, now,
So-
for instance, Naperville, again, they require chickens be in a pen, coop, building, or other enclosure. If they're not in such an enclosure, they have to be tethered at all times. Try and imagine tethering a chicken. Could be a fun game.
Yeah, you tether pheasants for training, but not chickens.
They require a permit and submittal of documents related to construction of coops, additions, modifications, etc.
I think just as long as fees or permit costs don't get crazy in this town, I think more people would want to do it. If it's too
Yeah.
expensive, then you're going to wind up weeding out a lot of
Yeah,
people
that
that want to do
part's
it.
that part's above our pay grade.
Right. But fees and permits for that shouldn't happen.
Yeah, Naperville also requires 6-foot screening of ball pens, coops, or other structures for housing fowls.
But I think the people that want them are the people that are really going to take care of them.
So I guess the question is, where do we stand as a commission right now? On this, is this consensus? Is there consensus that it's something that we want to discuss further? Is it consensus that it's
I'll make my 2 cents. I've been to Villa Park my whole life. It's a suburban area, and we're trying to bring the farming part of it to a suburban area. There's lots and pros and cons to the whole aspect of it. As far as what your rights are by law and everything, I would say, yeah, that would be in a rural area, maybe not a suburban area. But we're talking about farm animals. I have a friend of mine, he lives at Elmhurst. He had a potbelly pig as a pet. He had to bring it to the village so they could put it down because it was livestock. So you open up the door for chickens, what else, what are we gonna have behind that? How's the village going to police it, ordinance it? I mean, they don't have enough staff to do what they're doing now. It's difficult to make. Okay, you've had yours for a while, then probably found out that they're not allowed. Kept it. I mean, your lot's big enough. Not many people know you have. In a 50-foot lot, that's 50 foot wide. It would probably be a different scenario. How it would work, I couldn't tell you.
We can tell you because we have plenty of examples of small yards successfully raising chickens with no complaints. And so, I mean, should you want more actual case studies like that and more exact information, detailed information, and I'd be willing to continue this conversation and answer those more detailed questions. When we're discussing the force behind policing the chickens and they're not a threat. So this concept or this idea of not being able to keep up with the
Well, I wouldn't say the chickens are the threat. It's the food waste that's being, you get some people that don't know what they're doing with their chickens. They start throwing all their scrap food out there for the chickens, and then all the raccoons, possums, skunks, and everything else that's gonna actually come and feed in their yard on it, and then that population grow.
So with I'm trying to think of the word that you get when you come to the village and I'm just trying to blank here.
Permit?
A permit. With a permit to have a coop, it could be a requirement, which is what some towns do, that you have to take a course or you have this manual that you're in charge of reading. And you need to be well educated. And again, typically people that have chickens don't want raccoons. They're leaving their scraps out like that. They're not gonna have chickens tomorrow morning, you know?
It's the same, a raccoon to leave their chicken.
Right. They're gonna learn that lesson real quick.
I was looking on, and raccoons, possums, skunks, they're at no shortage. I think every night in the summer I have to go outside, pick up my garbage can, close the lid, put all the garbage back in there. I don't think the scraps of chickens are gonna last that long, because chickens will eat it up real fast. They're scavengers, they eat everything. And I mean, we don't have a shortage of garbage for that. These animals eat it anyway. I don't think the chickens will do anything.
Plus you feed them in that large area to coop anyway. I wouldn't feed them out in the yard, because they have to run part of it.
You know, from what I'm hearing, it seems like the biggest concern is what neighbors are gonna think. I mean, the agenda's been out for, I don't know, about a week or so. We have 4 residents here in favor of it. And if someone's really opposed to the idea, they would be here to voice their opinion. So I mean, it kind of gives you a representation of what's going to go on, what the feeling of the village is.
There was
Troops on Chicago rooftops. You're in a big city and they got chickens.
There was not a single pushback. I think I had 2 comments that were kind of like, and they were about the roosters. And they were both about roosters. You know, I don't want to be woken, maybe, but I don't want to be woken up at 4:30 in the morning. And you know, I responded, this is for hens, not roosters. And the response was, well, don't you want the eggs? And to that is, you don't need the rooster for the hen to lay the egg. And, you know, that was somebody that was not educated and that they probably wouldn't choose to have chickens then.
I had another question.
Yeah.
Patrick.
Yes.
What of your, as far as the village's thoughts on this?
Nice time.
The village is aware of a number of suburban communities that have allowed chickens. But it's a fairly new phenomena. It's all about sustainability and issues associated with sustainability and teaching children about animals and care of animals and how to raise them correctly. If I might suggest, let staff try to gather as much information as we can about what has been done in other suburban communities in and around Chicago, and bring that back for you to digest, mull over, and go from there.
Patrick, is it legitimate? Is there such a thing as a trial ordinance or a pilot program, or is that even doable?
Pilot programs absolutely are doable. The only issue with trial programs is if they don't work,
Got a lot of chickens
taking
laying around.
them away from the owners who have them.
Especially when you're dealing with animals, particularly animals that are seen as pets.
Absolutely.
I mean, say you're a community that doesn't allow Rottweilers because Rottweilers are evil dogs. You say, well, we're going to have a pilot program. Let's see what happens if we introduce them. And then a year later you go, yeah, no, we don't want that.
And then
Then you have to go tell all those people that
they have
want
to.
their dog that they can't have their dog.
He's not comparing chickens to Rottweilers.
No, I'm just using that as an example because it's a specific breed of dog
Yes.
that's been banned in some communities, right or wrong. I'm not discussing the rightness or wrongness of that kind of ordinance. I think it's.
I gotta
But if you
subject.
have them agree with them when they do this, if it doesn't work, it's gone. If you agree to it, it's gone, you know.
May I ask your name again?
My name,
First name.
Kate.
Okay, then I would have a suggestion. Rich, Kate, and Angie can get together with village staff and come up with a pilot program and put that in writing and let us mull that over.
I'd be totally willing to do that.
And I'd like to see what other municipalities,
Yes,
you know, because
absolutely.
some of the things you mentioned, I thought were really very pertinent. 6-foot privacy fence, I think, is pertinent. Certainly controlling the coop, or I don't know, whatever you call the house thing, the whole thing.
I think you need to come over.
Pardon?
I think you need to come to our house and check out chicken feed.
It's okay. Send me a picture.
Lots of pictures.
But I think that's kind of where I'm at on this. This is where I was at on this when it came up. It probably was 7 or 8 years ago, where I understand the benefits of it. I understand why it works in some communities and even some parts of some communities. But even looking over, there's a lot of similarities between Downers Grove and Naperville. Lake Bluff is a little different animal, but looking over just these 3 ordinances, there are certain things that overlap in all 3. There's whether it's the limit, you have a minimum of 4 in one, a maximum of 4 in one and a maximum of 8 in the other. The distance away, some of them are, this one's 10 feet, the other one's 10 feet from property line, the other's 200 feet from any residence. That's a wide range of variables, and to sit here tonight and say this is something we could do is tough, but I think what you're suggesting, look into some other communities, because there probably are dozens of communities, maybe in this part of Illinois.
Well, the
And-
part that I do like that you mentioned is the education, the permit for the village, so the village knows who's got them, and just understanding what you got to do with them and how to care for them, not
Yeah.
just get them and throw them in your backyard and say, okay, I got chickens.
I've got a question. You talked about eating them. Where's the beheading going to happen and that sort of stuff?
That's in one of the ordinances.
Oh,
Can't
is
be
it?
had in public.
Because I know a guy who grew up on a chicken
Great.
farm and doesn't eat chicken, never has eaten chicken.
We just had 3 pheasants this year because for some dog training. And we don't have long, it's just a short period of time. And she got a rooster and 2 hens, and she said it keeps them together, and then he got a little, before they got to see him, I mean, he was pretty much run, full apart, cleaned in the freezer before I knew. So it's all in the backyard. They understand if we hunt.
So you do that, you're going to do it in somebody's yard?
We do it in our own yard.
You don't eat your chickens, do you? No.
But
And then
I'm just
there's
saying,
also
if somebody
companies that
wanted
do
to,
that.
they-
You can
Well-
send your chickens somewhere.
Yeah, I don't think we should allow that in the yard, for damn sure.
No, I'm just saying,
Pull together all the good spots, make it work for both
Right.
parties.
Yes.
I mean, it's
Find what's working for the other counties or cities
Mm-hmm.
and towns, and pull what works for Middle Park, if it's a small lot, then we limit the space or we limit the chicken amount. If it's, I mean, we can make it adapted to what works for everybody. Those small lots, I don't think 8 chickens would be great. Or a 6-foot fence, that's nice. But if we can make something that works, allow the chickens, allow the village to know who's keeping what, and write out something that's everyone understands.
The potential problem with the permit / pilot program, and I'm not against it, but the potential problem from an enforcement standpoint is that if you require a permit for a chicken, and you have a permit for a chicken, and your neighbor knows you have a chicken, he doesn't know you have a permit, and he gets 3 chickens. It's not legal, but that's with pilot programs, that's a potential too. But
I think just education.
yeah,
And communicate with your neighbor.
Yeah.
Communicate with your neighbor before you do it.
no, and I know there are communities that require all kinds of permits and licenses that you have to have the knowledge to know. And it's
Well,
just
how many
go
licensed dogs do we have in Villa Park right now? I wonder.
10.
I mean, there's a
No, I know, that's what I'm saying.
There's a point. I mean, I'll actually state I'm somewhat in favor of this. I grew up on a farm, and I come from farm folk, and I'm not opposed to this at all. But one thing that keeps running through my mind, on vacation, you go to an exotic place, you see chickens just running wild and running free. And how did that all get started? I mean, smaller islands, things like that, maybe. But are we going to have chickens, running around eventually, and 50, 60, 100 years all over Villa Park, and is it going to be like free range chickens and everybody can just go? I mean, that's the way it is in Hawaii, right?
Back to our roots.
You think about Hawaii. I'm not opposed to it at all. I just think that there does need to be some certain stipulations that need to be put into place.
It is tricky because, like Mike said, it's like chickens. Well, what about ducks and geese? Ducks and geese.
I think geese should be like open season.
I know. I agree.
I think we should all get hunting
have
permits.
geese for
And
turkey
I'm joking,
Thanksgiving.
everyone.
But it is a fine line because there is the 50 years ago when I lived in Villa Park, I had 20 chickens, 14 geese, 7 ducks, and a horse. And it's not that Villa Park anymore. So you got to find that balance. And I think there's potentially a balance there. Maybe. I still struggle with it on the small lots.
Yeah.
But I just think about my street and if the right regulations, I think that's going to be the key, Patrick. Trying to find communities with communities that are similar to the 90-some% of lots in Villa Park that are 50 by 140 to 200 and some feet.
You just have to look at like Berkeley.
Oak Park.
Oak Park.
Okay.
And they all have.
Oak Park is 25 and 30 foot lots.
Yeah, in some parts of it for sure.
I mean, I think as long as they build the coops and the village oversees a lot of that, and they permits for the coops or have certain guidelines they need to follow. I mean, pretty much anything that we're gonna do, there's got to be rules for it. There's rules for dogs, cats, and any other pets you have. So,
Right. So, do we have
I think we
consensus
should look into it.
at this time for staff to investigate further and potentially work with the members of the community who are interested to see what options there are?
Put something together that we can actually look at.
It's what we asked of,
It's a concept.
it's what we asked of the people. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this, but in the last couple of months, we have people who wanted to build tiny homes, some on single lots or maybe big developments. I don't know anything about tiny homes. I did some research, but I also said if you guys are so interested, really help us understand what the concept is. And so staff could do some of that, but staff is also overwhelmed at times, I'm sure. So any sources you could guide them to, any what works for you, what doesn't work, those kind of things would certainly be helpful.
I'd rather have a chicken coop next door than a tiny house.
Or a Rottweiler for that matter.
Yeah,
Hey.
I already have one of those. Yeah.
Okay, so consensus to,
Yep.
yep,
Continue,
all right.
yes.
So, well, consensus, so we'll do that. Next on the agenda is discussion of inoperable vehicles and repairs, but Patrick, unless you think there's a large segment of the population that wants to talk about that, I say let's get signs out of the way.
Okay.
Because I know there are people that want to talk about signs, but I don't think inoperable vehicles, probably not. So anything you want to say on that before?
I've had a number of conversations with Mr. Gwynn about our sign ordinance, and given that we're redoing the entire zoning code that includes signs, I thought it was an opportune time for him to come forward and express his desires, given the fact that he really doesn't have, you could say, well, ask for a variance. He really doesn't have any unique features that would allow him to qualify for a variance. Therefore, that really leaves just amending the sign code to allow him to do what he would like to do. So, yeah, again, given the fact that we're redoing the zoning code, I thought it was the perfect opportunity that if there was any desire at all to change it, now would be the time.
Okay.
The current code, well, the proposal that is before you, as it relates to signs, really doesn't change anything as it relates to the amount of signage that we allow or where you can put it. The real change between the existing code and what's proposed is the fact that it prohibits, the new one prohibits pole signs. So any new detached signage would require you to do a monument. You would not be able to do a pole sign. For attached signs, you would not be able to do a box sign. You'd have to do channel letters or some other type of sign. And that's really the major difference between the existing code and the proposed zoning code. So with that, I know Steve's already talked. If he has anything more he'd like to add, you may want to hear it, but just open up for discussion.
Okay. Before we start discussing up here, does anybody have anything? Let me just clarify one point here real quick. Like Patrick said, nothing is changing with signs in terms of area of signs, locations of signs, et cetera, between the old ordinance and the new ordinance. All that will remain the same, as well as, I believe, all the language related to electronic signs. There might be some minor changes, but I don't think so, other than prohibiting box signs and requiring monument signs instead of pole signs. None of this would also none of it would make any existing signs, as it stands now, none of it would make any existing signs illegal. Now or in the future, short of some change in the future beyond this. Currently, in terms of, so in non-residential areas, freestanding, let's see, area of signs. We permit, so it's on page 8, let's see, section 8.6.2. We have freestanding signs, 50%, up to 50%, 50-foot frontage. You can have 50 square foot of area, up to 100 square feet of frontage, 100 square feet of area, up to 200 square feet of frontage, it's 150 area, up to 350, it's 200 area. And then for wall signs, .5 square feet per linear feet of building, street facing building frontage. it's different on corner lots, but none of that's changing. I know, what's your last, was your last name Gwen?
Yes.
Steve, right?
Yes.
Okay. Just out of curiosity, do you know this package that you showed us? Do you have any idea what the sign area is on that? I mean, it looks like quite a bit. I mean, I don't know. Yeah, and your existing freestanding sign is fairly small. How big is your lot? Do you know what your frontage is?
25 feet.
25 feet.
25 feet wide, and then the building is roughly about 50 feet in terms of depth.
The building is
Steve.
5 feet wide.
Okay, how wide?
Steve, you want, Steve, the sound guy wants you back at the mic.
Probably 100 feet wide.
Yes. Yeah. Sorry about that. So how wide do you think the lot is?
Approximately 100 feet.
Okay. Okay. So that's.
Well, could I, if we're taking opinions on chickens, can you guys give me your opinions of the sign that I've shown you today? Do you find it to be something outlandish? Safari Land has something very similar on the front of their building. I understand that they were grandfathered in with the signage. The parking lot's packed. They have really good turnout. It's how I found them. I take my kids there. If there was a tiny little elephant on the front of the building, I probably would have never taken my children there. The other thing about it is, I was a Home Depot store manager for roughly about 8 to 10 years, and we kind of live by the mantra: get the biggest sign that you can. To not be allowed the opportunity to have a larger sort of sign is actually it's detrimental from a tax standpoint. My average dollar sale in our store is we sell the high-end transponder keys for vehicles and things of that nature. Our average sale is roughly about $125 to $130. I don't have a calculator in front of me, but you do our tax rate times that average sale, the more money that my business generates is the more sales tax that we pay into the village. Also, if the village is policing the size of the signs, or allowing businesses to do other things signage wise, it's also going to generate dollars for the village from a permit standpoint as well. I was able to get a temporary signage permit. It's $200. It's good for 60 days. Well, if I look at what the cost of renting that billboard above my store is, which is anywhere roughly from $1,200 to $1,500 a month, which for me equates to roughly 3.5 to 4 customers per week. Whereas if I could do something similar to the building wrap, it's a one-time cost for us. It's $5,000. That considerable amount of savings, you start factoring looking at $7,500 to a small business. That's a health care plan. That's a raise for a good employee. Decent holiday party. There's just a lot of different things that we could do with the added income that would come in from allowing us to do something like this. And I know from personal experience that large signs work. Okay, we were paying the $1,200-1,500 a month, but it was generating really, really good store traffic. I tried to reason with the owner of the sign. Says, hey, look, he wanted. It's so funny. He came into the store one day, and a guy came in and bought like $1,000 worth of keys. I'm like, great, the sign man's here right when this is happening. So ever since then, he thinks that we're like this big gold mine, and that his sign is the key to our growth or to us being there. And it really does help. The large sign was fantastic for us, but being that we're on a major thoroughway, even if I can't do it that big, it doesn't necessarily have to be that big. That was kind of transposed. That's not real world what the design would actually be. It would be smaller than that. It's not going to go all the way to the top of the top of the roof and all the way down to the ground. It would be tasteful and then, you know, makes sense for the building. We don't want to make the place. Again, we don't want it to look like. I live in the village. So I don't want to see something that is untasteful, or, you know, the businesses in the community start doing something that would bring, you know, bad light or bad attention to the village. We just voted the 28th nicest place to live in the country. That's saying a lot. From a small business standpoint, I think it would be, you know, I think we're missing an opportunity as a community to help our small businesses generate additional sustainable tax dollars. And if I could just have any of your opinions on what I'm showing you, what do you guys think of it? You know, that would be meaningful.
Okay. So, my initial thoughts is that, and I know you said that's not necessarily what it would be, but that's too much sign. I mean, it's plain and simple. And if you, signs and advertising for businesses is tricky. It's a slip. It is this, unlike, less so like chickens. It really is a slippery slope, because if you as a business do something and it works, in terms of signage, advertising, whatever, then other businesses are going to want to adopt it.
Sure.
And when it's bigger, bolder, flashier, at some point, everyone adopts that to try to keep up with you, not you, but whoever starts it. And at some point, you all lose, because you invest in all this advertising that now everybody has, and it all becomes one mass of. As an example, I will use one of the things that I hope nobody here uses them, but the flashing, running LEDs around windows, chasing, flashing, strobing, not actually legal in our village, but a number of shops up and down St. Charles installed them to attract attention to their business. They're obnoxious. They chase, they flash, they're red, they're white, they're green, they're blue. Staff has to run those people down, tell them to tone it down, because if all the businesses did that, then you'd just drive past it and it would be an annoyance. And you would say, why do I want to shop in this village? It's tacky. I'm not saying this is tacky, but it's the same thing with, same issue that we ran into with LED signs, electric signs, is that some people installed them, maintained them appropriately, tastefully, size appropriate for their business. Some people installed them, and we probably have some of the ones that exist in the village now that still aren't legal. They're probably 4 or 5 times brighter than allowed. They flash, they strobe, and it attracts you to that business. But if every business had it, it wouldn't mean anything. And that's where there's a fine line. Do you happen to have a picture of your business as the signage is on it now?
Here, Joe Jason.
I'm just curious. Yeah, because, I mean, that's not bad, but I understand you're on North Avenue, correct?
Yes, sir.
It's a high-traffic roadway. A small business does struggle to be seen on some place where the speed limit's 45,
Right.
and most people are doing 55.
we get lost. We have a number of customers who tell us, I passed you guys 3 times, I had to make the block 3 or 4 times before they actually knew exactly where we were.
Right.
I have examples of less signage, okay? But even the examples of less signage, currently as the ordinance stand, are not allowed.
Okay. Is the signage on there now? That's all permitted and
Yes.
in conformance with the ordinances, existing ordinances. Okay.
So these are smaller examples of what the village currently considers to be temporary signage, but they are more or less temporary permanent signage depending on the design and also cost. One example was actually from Villa Park Office Supply. They had a large banner on the side of their building. We sell used office furniture with an arrow pointing right to the village. Well, I brought it to the attention of the village that, hey, this business is allowed to have this sign, and subsequently the village did ask them to take it down. Understandably so, it was in violation of the current ordinance, but I will say, as a resident and business owner, when I got ready to open the shop on North Avenue, I was headed to Staples to go buy office furniture. I saw that sign on the side of their building, and I bought my office furniture from a local business. You know, there's tasteful ways of doing it. I would ask that the village would at least consider looking at what some of the other surrounding communities are doing in terms of their signage ordinances. Westmont, Elk Grove, Elmhurst, these are all, you know, suburbs that are relatively close to us, that do not have as strenuous of a signage ordinance. And I think that the business owners in those communities don't want to do anything tacky or distasteful with their business. This is semi-imposed, and again, not meant to be, it isn't true to size for what we'd like to do. Again, this isn't something that would run all the way up to the top of the building, nor would it run all the way to the bottom of the building. So, other suburbs that I can think of that do allow this type of signage would be Oak Lawn, Chicago Ridge. Again, these are Cook County suburbs, I understand that. But if we could just maybe perhaps look at some of the other communities surrounding us, similar to the way we're going to look at what some of the other communities are doing with the chickens, you know, hopefully the village would at least consider looking at some of the ordinances that are out there for similar communities to ours.
Okay.
So maybe not so much, but like my temporary signage permit, right? The one picture that I just passed around that shows that locksmith banner.
Yeah.
Okay, so that banner is 2 feet by 20, which is permittable within the village for a temporary signage permit. But I can only do one. Okay, so I couldn't do that small 2 by 20 ribbon on the east side of the building and the west side of the building. I would be happy with being able to do that 2 by 20 down the sides of both buildings. It just basically says locksmith. It's got a picture of some of the products that we sell. That picture is from our store in the city, and it generates a lot of traffic with minimal interruption to people driving up and down the street. Nothing, I don't want anything flashing. I don't want any neon or anything like that. But I would like the opportunity to use the east and west walls of the store better.
Do you currently have any signage on the east and west
No,
sides?
no.
I would think you'd get more visibility for the eastbound side. Because people are heading east and you're right there as they're heading east.
The eastbound helps, but
I don't know from over, if I was going west, I don't know that.
it depends. We are, because of the service that we provide, we are a destination type of store. Once people become aware of us, they'll make that U-turn and they'll come into the building because, everybody has a car, okay? And a lot of people have one key or the kids lost one of the keys to the car, so on and so forth. You go to the dealership, we're talking 2 to 4 hours turnaround time, and double the cost of what we charge. So it's really about, for us, it's about generating awareness more so than even getting immediate attention. When we had the large sign in the air, a lot of people would come in and say, hey, I drove past this place a million times. I saw the big sign. I saw the big sign. I saw the big sign. Finally, I decided to come in. But if we could use those east and west walls on a more permanent basis, it would be a huge help to us.
Patrick, if I'm understanding this property and the ordinance correctly, so I'm just going to assume that he's got 100 feet of frontage. He's currently permitted 100 square feet of standalone signage and 150 square feet of wall signage. Is that?
No.
Is he a corner?
No. He would be permitted 37.5 square feet of attached signage because it's 1.5 times your linear frontage of your building.
Okay.
I will say in this particular instance.
Oh, linear frontage of the building. Okay.
Yes, not the property, the building. He has
Right, I see.
Unused square footage of signage for his attached sign. He certainly could make that bigger. The other thing, because he's on North Avenue, he could also choose to have automatic changeable copy up to 50% of the total allowable sign area.
Okay.
There are options. And the other thing about North Avenue, because of the medians that exist, you can only access the site if you're eastbound. If you're westbound, you have to do a U-turn after you pass the site. So I would say there are options that he has that he hasn't fully utilized.
The wall signage is pretty much maxed out. Is that the case?
Yes.
Okay.
That is the case. And he is on a temporary for one of those. So
I'll make my comments. I would say on and off, we spent almost 2 years on redoing our sign ordinance just recently. I can remember topics that came up. If you could put your pole sign in the middle of North Avenue, you would.
That's like you said. You want a bigger sign. You said when you work with for Home Depot, the goal is to get the biggest sign that you could, and that's
You can't
Commissioner Gatto on our commission actually said that
You can't let the businesses police their own signs, or it doesn't work. We've already had our issues with all kinds of signage in the village, and the extent that people will go to have their business noticed. But I would suggest to you to work with staff to see what your best resolution is. I mean,
Yeah, if I could have the 2x20 banners on each side of the building, I'd be extremely happy.
that would be something you'd need to work with staff, and if you can come up with something that would need a variance or something like that, then you would have to show why the variance. I mean, that's...
Yeah, I don't know about it. a hardship per se. It is, you've got a 25-foot wide building. I mean, that's the issue, and it's.
And the front of our building is mainly glass. So, one thing that I think is tacky, but is actually allowable in the village, if I wanted to do like that screen type of thing on the windows and have pictures of car keys on the windows,
Yes,
that's tacky.
I would agree with you on both points. One, I think it's tacky.
That's tacky.
And two, you are allowed a certain percentage of window signage. That's one that I think the new ordinance requires it to be to be changed frequently, I believe. I have to look into that. But I do know that the look that I don't think anybody likes is when you walk up to the convenience store that has
Right.
85-90% of its windows covered with advertising signs. And I agree with you, and that's something that.
And for us, the building faces north, and traffic is traveling east and west. So for us to do something that is allowed in the village, but is facing northbound, would really, that wouldn't do anything for us except make us look like a tacky business on North Avenue. Whereas, the banners, they're weather resistant, they're grommets every 12 inches to make sure that they stay attached to the building. Again, not needing to utilize the entire building on the east and the west side, but just a 2x20 ribbon on the east side and the west side of the business would generate a decent amount of traffic for us.
Yeah. I found this section I was thinking of, Patrick. The promotional window sign ordinance now reads, promotional window signs are allowed as sign exceptions for allowed non-residential uses for a maximum period of 60 days in any calendar year, provided they do not cover more than 75% of the area of the window which they are affixed. So the point of that was not necessarily to outlaw window signs entirely, but as I recall the discussion, that the point was to keep the store from having a sign that's been up there for 3 years and faded and falling off the wall windows, and
It says going out of business.
essentially, yes. Essentially, it gives code enforcement an opportunity to go up and say that sign's been there a lot longer than 60 days. It looks
need to
like
change
make it go. Yeah,
And we're not saying that it has to go away, it just has to be changed.
I still think 75% is too much, but I was overruled on that one.
Any input from any of the other members of the commission?
This may not be of great service to you, but when the new big gas station goes in at Ardmore and North Avenue, as people are standing there filling their tanks, maybe you'll get more visibility.
I would be interested in seeing what other cities are doing, but I suspect you guys already did that. So it would probably be redundant for us to do it. I find it hard to believe that Elmhurst is less restrictive than Villa Park, because
I do too.
I went through getting a sign in Elmhurst, and it was tough.
I actually know this is maybe not a great example because I think it was too far the other way. Downers Grove, about 10 years ago, enacted a sign ordinance update that limited any single tenant frontage to a maximum of 350 square feet of signage total. Wall signs, pole signs, total. And they gave a 7-year period to come into compliance or to get your money out of that sign, and at the end of that, they started writing tickets. Kohl's, Home Depot, Fry's. Fry's has almost a mile of frontage. They have about 1,500 square feet of signs. They're only permitted 350. That's the example of a bad ordinance, because it did go too far. It was designed to keep signs in check in their smaller neighborhood areas along Ogden Avenue and downtown, and it was an undue burden on a lot of businesses along Butterfield and along the expressway. And the last time I checked, which was about a year ago, every business that went in to get a variance was told no. They were denied. They had to come into compliance. So that meant removing signs. That's not something we're looking to do. That's the last thing that we want an ordinance update to do. The only question is this enough? Is there some way to allow a business with a small building? I mean, is this more restrictive than other communities? I don't think it is, based on the signage that we've seen in the community, and it works for most businesses, it appears to, but I don't know that for a fact. I would be open to seeing some other numbers, especially on the smaller end of the scale, from other communities. I mean, I could do that research myself, but
2 by 20 would be, is 40 square feet. I would be happy with 80 square feet of allowable signage for the total building. That would give me basically a 20 by 2 foot run on the east side of the building and also on the west side of the building. And real similar to the sign that's on the current locksmith shop sign that I submitted.
The only point that I can make on that is that works great when you have one freestanding building all by itself, but what about the multi-tenant building where you're an interior tenant and you literally only have 25 square feet of frontage on your building, and that's it?
right.
I mean,
That's kind of what the Downers Grove ordinance, I think part of that was designed to limit the signs in strip malls because it was per tenant frontage, not building frontage. So if you had a string of businesses in a strip mall, they could all have a certain amount of frontage, but when you got into a big property, it was treated the same way, even though it's completely different. And that's where we have to be careful too, is that if you go too far the other way, what does that do with bigger buildings or buildings in a row or a strip mall? And I think that's...
Staff can do the exercise of what other communities do. But the fact of the matter is, communities that have restrictive sign ordinances have successful businesses. Communities that have extremely lenient sign requirements have successful businesses. And it runs the full gamut. The question is, what do we as a community want to see? Obviously, if you allow a business to have unlimited signage, the first ones to get their unlimited signage out are going to benefit. But as soon as everybody gets their signage up to the allowable sign limit, then you're right back where you were before.
Right.
So, like I say, staff can do the exercise, but it really comes down to what do we want as Villa Park. And with being named the 28th best community to live in the United States, I'd say we're doing something right.
I thought we were on some other new list now. We're like top something.
Well,
place.
number 8 as far as livability is residential livability or something like that, so.
I'll go back to my other comment. I think we spent 2 years on signs. We spent many months with the steering committee on signs. And me personally, I'm not looking to redo it. I honestly suggest that you work with staff. They have great suggestions that have worked in the village already for businesses. Sit and talk with Patrick and work it out with him to what's going to work for your business. But me personally, I mean, all the time that we've already invested in our sign ordinance, and this is just recently, I think we were pretty solid on all the decisions that we made as a group.
I tend to agree with that. I may do a little research on my own just for comparison's sake, but I think as a village I think we're in the middle. I mean, I really do. We're not as restrictive as some communities in the area. I mean, I think
2 by 20 isn't hurting it. 40 square feet on linear space, a 2-foot sign says locksmith on the east and west side of the buildings. I can't see how that is a detriment to the aesthetics of North Avenue.
well, where staff might be able to help you here is that Patrick has mentioned that your existing pole sign it could be larger, which means you might have some area to play with there. It's some other way. He may have some ideas. You may have some ideas. I'm looking at your north frontage, and I know you want to be visible, but your total wall signage doesn't have to be confined to the north side. You could lose a little bit of your north signage, move it to your east and west to increase that visibility. I mean, I know you want some visibility on the north, but I bet most people that see you are going to see you coming from the east and west.
Absolutely.
So there may be some things that you could do that aren't incredibly expensive, that are within code, that get you better visibility. And
I will say that I did look into increasing the size of our pole sign. We're talking between $15,000 to $25,000 investment. It's not a cheap undertaking to do, and to get there, we've got to generate the revenue to be able to make that sort of investment into a sign. I would be perfectly happy 2 by 20, just 2 by 20 on the east and west sides of the building. We currently have 2 small signs on the north side of the building. Say locksmith, it's a small there's small banners. They're 2 by 4. So if staff were to say, okay, well, let's lose the signs that are on the north side of the building, let's take those down, and now the 2 by 20s would be allowable on the east and west side of the building, I'd be more than happy to do that.
that's perfectly legal, right? Right? I mean, they don't have to be on the north side, do they? They could be on the east and west.
Yeah.
So if he's got, and I'm just looking here, I see you've got 2 signs that say locksmith right at front. And then are these, looks like your logo in the box, that's kind of the sign area, correct?
Are you talking $15,000 to replace the whole pole sign, or just a new box on the pole
New
sign?
box on the pole sign.
That sounds like a lot of money for a
$15,000 to
new box.
$25,000 investment. I've looked into it.
So I'd put up a whole brand new double-sided monument sign
They're
for like
not cheap.
$30,000.
They're not cheap. The LED signs, which I have no interest in doing, and LED is roughly $25,000 to $30,000 including installation.
Yeah, that does sound right on that. I mean, I think there are some ways you could play with the signage and get close to what you're not going to get what you want, and you're certainly not going to get. I'm not speaking for anybody on this commission but me, but the initial thing, which you even admitted was a little over the top. But we can't do that as a village. I mean, we can't have every building wrapped because every building would be wrapped. And you could say yours is tasteful and you're a locksmith and it's creative and it's artsy, but not all businesses approach signage that way. You know that just from driving down. So what we permit for you, we also have to think, what is the person that doesn't give a crap about design, doesn't give a crap about how it ties into the character, context of the neighborhood, what are they going to do with it? So, you've got this that looks like a lockbox, and it's actually kind of a cool idea on the side of a building, honestly. I mean,
we could do it a lot smaller. It doesn't have to be.
But here's my point. You want to do that. Somebody might just want to paint it white and in giant red letters put "my business here," and that doesn't work. That doesn't work for a community because then every surface would be covered, or even most surfaces would be covered. I think I'm at the same point as Commissioner Orlowski, where I think work with staff, see what you could come up with. I think there's a path forward where you could have better signage. I know staff is overworked. I won't say underpaid because I don't know that to be a fact, but
we can't write a sign ordinance for each individual business in Villa Park. That ain't gonna happen.
But I know nobody in community development wants to see a business fail. That's the last thing they want.
59 hours in the register day before yesterday.
I will be happy to meet Mr. Gwynn over at Keyway next week and go over some options.
Because I do think.
How does everybody else feel about that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I think there are some ways to increase your visibility a little bit and still be in, and not spend a ton of money. Because I get not wanting to spend $15,000 on a new sign because you got to have the money to do it. But sometimes you do have to invest in the business too. That's the downside. While we're on the topic of signs, I see there's people hanging out. Anybody got any questions, comments about signs or the new ordinance? Or
I have one on the ordinance, but on the sign.
okay, we'll get to you in just a second then. Anything else?
I just kind of had a comment listening to the gentleman with the billboard that went once, was just empty. Wasn't that just a perfect opportunity for you to maybe you did talk to him, say, hey, I'll do your contract at this price for you.
We were with him for 18 months.
Okay.
At $1,500 a month. We came back to him and said, return on investment, the sign's doing great for us, we're happy to have it. It faces one direction. The sign was vacant the entire year of our build out. 2 of the 3 years, the sign has been vacant. It's vacant now. My offer to him was, well, we've been there 18 months, concede a little bit, come down to $1,200 a month, and I'll re-up it. He chose to take it down anyway. And there's nothing that I can't force him to rent the sign to me at $1,200 a month, but I have tried to work with the owner of the sign company, so then he took it down. He chose to take it down. So then he came back to me last week and said, hey, I'd be willing to put the sign back up if you want to pay the reinstallation cost.
See, but the money that you've spent to advertise on this sign, you could have already built a new pole sign or monument sign out front of your business.
Well, but you've got to generate when the sign came down, the revenue went down at the same time. So it's like I'm caught with my tail kind of, between my legs and a hard place. The 2x20s on the east and west side of the building would generate the dollars for us to invest in more permanent signage.
Meet with staff next week.
Because I understand your plight, but there isn't a business owner in this village that wouldn't take more signage if it was offered to them. You said that yourself. I mean, there's a point, and I know we've got a few business owners here. You guys would all like a little more signage, right?
Oh, yeah.
But there's got to be a limit, because everybody doesn't come to these meetings. Everybody doesn't live in, every business owner doesn't come to these meetings. Every business owner doesn't live in this village, and every business owner doesn't care about this village. They're not all going to be tasteful. They're not, and so that's part of why there's a limit. I mean, too much signage is too much signage no matter what. But it, like Mike said, if you let them put the sign in the middle of the street so traffic had to stop at their business to read it, they would. That's not true of everybody, but some business owners, we know it is. So I think you could get somewhere with staff. That's where I'm at. And we could certainly.
I would just ask that the commission does at least see what other villages are doing. Do I want to drive up and down?
We've already done that. That's what we worked with when we did our new sign ordinance. We looked at not just other communities, we looked at other states.
We had probably 2 years, give or take, of discussion involving community development, involving economic development, involving the Community Development Commission, Traffic and Safety Commission. We got to the point with electronic signs that we actually went down to the Odium and they showed us what their sign could do. So we understood how that worked. I mean, this is an issue we really, really went over. And signs are a tricky area because we have an ordinance that seems to work for the majority of the village, and any change in it in the sign ordinance sets off another 2 years of meetings and hearings, and these people think it's too much, these people think it's too much, other people think it's not enough, and I think it's good where it's at. I mean, I will say this, I do think we're in the middle. I don't think we're overly strict. Based on the research that we've done, and that's where I come down on it. So, Patrick, you're willing to meet with him and see what can be done, and there may be opportunities that neither one of you have thought of. And I'll tell you this, I'll even take a look closer at your property personally, and talk if anything, if I could think of anything that works for you, because this is kind of what I do for a living. I'll pass it on to Patrick to pass on to you, because I get it. It's not easy running a small business on North Avenue, especially. So, is that good?
Good.
All right. Do we want to talk about inoperable vehicles now?
No.
Or do we want to talk about?
We're going to talk about accessory structures and their setbacks. In our current ordinance and in the proposed ordinance, accessory buildings, and we consider decks and patios as accessory buildings, must be set back at least 5 feet from rear and side lot lines and at least 20 feet from street lot lines. Joe's a resident. He's talked to me on a number of occasions. He came to one of the open houses. He's got a patio that he'd like to do in his backyard, and he would like to take it right up to, he's got a 6-foot fence, take it right up to the fence line that's on the property line. So I'll let Joe come up and tell us about it.
Can you reference an ordinance? Can you reference an ordinance?
If you want to turn to page 619
In the,
in the new code.
oh,
It would be paragraph F2.
I get it.
and that's similar to the existing, that's the same as the existing
Same
ordinance?
as the existing,
Okay,
yes.
thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity. Joe Coloni, 742 South Riverside Drive, Villa Park. I've been here for 3.5 years, moved from the city. Grew up in a rural town close to Starved Rock. Property was very, you live out in the country, so we're talking about chickens again, today comes back. But a lot of property lines, you have, there's really no boundaries and whatnot. Living in the city, obviously you can stick your hand out the window, touch your neighbor's window, no bound, there's really strict there. Moved to Villa Park, now have 3 kids, all under 6, 3, and 1 years old. And just really wanted to make the property look nice. So about a year ago, we decided to get a patio, looking to get a patio. So it would go from right outside our driveway, kind of on the side, like a little sidewalk area, go through our privacy fence, and then have like a little 400 square foot patio off our deck to the side. Went to the village, tried to get a permit, and they told me, you're right up on the line, you need to have a variance. And I said I wasn't aware, so I kind of did some research, actually watched some of these online to see how it goes, the variance and whatnot. And one of the things was, what's your hardship? I said, I don't have a hardship. I wanted to have, really ideally, my only hardship would be I want to have a space for my kids to play besides the driveway, and me sitting out there and making sure their ball doesn't go down the driveway into the street. So with a patio in the back would give them a little bit of an opportunity to kind of play around with their trucks on like a hard surface. I'm not saying that's the only reason, obviously. I want to make my property look nice. I wanted to be able to have it for entertaining. So when people would come over, they'd park in the driveway, they'd be able to just walk right on the long side of the house through the walkway, which would be within the 5-foot area, and then go back into my backyard, which is a privacy fence, 6-foot high privacy fence, gated in, and a fairly large deck. So my property is 60 by 167. So it's a normal lot. I have nothing else on the side. The fence does run around alongside my property. The patio that I'm looking to do would be stone pavers. It would be just, and I'm not a landscape architect by any means. I've talked to various contractors who have done this, who are authorized through Unilock, and then other recommendations I've had even through the village. And most of them say, it can be done. It's done in other areas. And to be honest with you, some of them are done not with a permit, to be honest with you. So to do it legally, I did my fence legally, got a permit, and I wanted to do that. Sure, I can have my sidewalk go all the way up to my property line, which, talking with Patrick, would work, because that is allowable to have a sidewalk area. The problem would be, once I get beyond that entry to my backyard through the fence, having the patio would go right up alongside my fence. And so you're probably asking, well, why do you need to have it all the way up to your fence? And so when you come into the backyard, you're kind of walking through the fence like this. The gate opening is right here in the middle, which is, within, I think it's maybe like 2.5, 3 feet. So if I would have that go in here, I'd have to then walk over another 2 feet and then have my patio go that way. And this area would be grass or landscape. So
all I'm asking for, you know, I don't want to go through the, I mean, I know I could go through the variance process and probably waste everyone's time in saying what's your hardship. There's not a hardship. I'm not trying to build a second garage right next to my property line, next to my neighbors. I'm not looking to do anything that's irrational. I'm not looking to extend my deck over there. It's going to be flush to the ground. It'll be pitched properly through professionals. I'm not going to do it myself. So the drainage would go out into my yard. It wouldn't go into the neighbors. There is a drain that would go underneath it anyway. And then I believe there's the way they would do the stones would be permeable, so then it would go through and it wouldn't, there shouldn't be any kind of runoff. So I'm just kind of open to what you guys would recommend on how I could possibly do that without going through the variance process. I know the current ordinance does say building accessories. So, you know, could there be a fine line between if it is a raised deck that may be above 2 feet, or if it is a shed? I'm looking to have just a general stone brick patio.
That's what I'm.
I've already looked. Patrick, do we have anything in there on brick cement patios at all? I mean, I just.
No, there's nothing that specifically references brick patios.
Okay. How far to the property line can you go with the driveway?
Right to the property line,
Okay,
yes.
Same for sidewalks too, right, or walkways?
correct.
Yep.
So the walkway's going in the backyard to the patio, right?
Patio
So
goes
where
right
does the
up to the
walkway technically end versus where the patio begins?
So patios and driveways patios and decks are considered accessory structures, but is it actually
Well-
worded that way in the ordinance anywhere? Or is it just, is that
That's the way it has been.
that's
Yeah.
interpretation of staff over,
Correct,
A deck is a structure.
correct.
Paved or patio. Actually, if you were to build your driveway out of pavers and wrap it around your house, you could.
Well, it has to be, I think it.
You can't do that. That's all your house.
it's, yeah, like I know Chicago has decks over a certain height are considered to be non-permitted obstructions in yards. And up to a certain height, they are permitted obstructions in yards. And I think in Chicago it's like 4 feet, which is kind of extreme. But, but you know, you have a lot of, basically allows them to build decks to a certain height. Is that language we need to consider or clarify, or?
Could we?
Because what is,
We'd have to add something for cement or paved or patio, really.
Right. It could just literally be another sentence
Correct.
on this provision.
Right. Can we look and see some comparisons to other villages if they've written it separate like that?
Yeah.
And then put something together with that?
Yeah, I can see a problem with a deck being up to the lot line, but I don't see a problem with pavers being up to the
No.
lot
The
line.
pavers are different from concrete.
Yeah, or
Right.
concrete.
though, again, that's,
Correct.
again, that gets tricky though, because how about a corner lot?
Everything with a corner lot is tricky. We've already
No,
had two
no,
of them.
I understand, I understand that, but, like I'm thinking,
I mean, if
like
we
a lot
allow,
of, I mean, there are communities where you can't put a driveway at all, or any paving in yards beyond what's necessary to access a garage. Like, we don't allow, we have a minimum allowed driveway. We don't allow driveways in front yards other than what's required to get to the backyard. We did expand that a little bit.
Doesn't mean we don't have them.
Yeah, no, I know.
Yeah, lots of-
I know lots of people.
But you could build a garage in the very back of your lot and run a driveway all the way up.
Right. Or I could let my yard go and just put rock and, you know, that'd be fine too.
That's gravel lot.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think,
Used to be gravel.
But if we allow driveways to go up the lot line,
Yeah.
and you're gonna do a paved patio or a cement patio, I wouldn't see the difference as long as it's pitched correctly.
Correct.
I think we
And
need
that
to
they
invest,
do-
I think we need to investigate this
Yeah.
a little bit.
Yeah, that's what I would.
Because,
And I'll be honest with you, I lost really 2 contractors because I lived in Villa Park. And I went there and I said, hey, I'm looking to do this. And it was, I mean, it's not a cheap job for someone to do. I mean, it's, for what I want, I think it was total square footage with the walkway and the patio would be around 545 square feet. So it'd be like, I think 400, then 140 going this way. And the sidewalk would be, you know, what's standard. I think it was like 3 or 4 feet, whatever is standard. And then, or 4 feet wide. And 2 people just, they wouldn't do anything else. They said, well, I can put in for you, and if you know, if someone catches you, then that's your problem. Or I can put in halfway and then you come back. I mean, I'm not gonna do that. I've been here 3.5 years. I plan on living here for a long time and.
If that's something we need to look at, because theoretically, pay their patio is it's not a second structure. But yeah, if we could investigate that and put something together.
Yeah. Yep.
we
Pay
just
their
need to,
pay their patio or pay their blocks, or people are using them for, I mean, we got people coming in they're wanting their aprons done in them.
Oh, yeah,
So,
absolutely.
I mean, we probably need to put something in there to where if we're allowing,
I
you're
think,
allowing the driveway to go to the property line and
I think the intent of that interpretation is that you want typically some sort of landscape buffer between parcels. Not necessarily everywhere, not all the time, but if everybody's got paver patios on the driveway, then, I mean, you wind up with the same thing that we get, and it's legal, but where you have 2 driveways that touch. That's legal,
Yeah, that-
but it's not it's not ideal.
No.
You would not argue with that, right?
No, I would not argue with that, especially in winter.
The reason we allow
Could have
driveways
shared
up
patios,
to
but
the
not-
property line is just the historical development pattern of the village. We started out with all detached garages in the back on 50-foot lots, which necessitate that the driveway be up to the lot line just to get around the house to the back of the yard where
Because you
the...
can't set the driveway back 5 feet and
The-
then have room to build a driveway and a
No,
house.
you could never do it. So just out of necessity, we have to allow driveways up to the property line. It's just that as time has gone by, we know we have a drainage issue, certainly in a lot of areas of the village. Most of your drainage easements are 5 feet. And it was to not exacerbate the drainage situation, and that's why it has always been interpreted that they stay out of that 5 feet on each side of the lot.
Right, because
So,
if you drain your gutters onto your patio, which pitches onto your neighbor's
Neighbor's property.
property
Yep.
into his basement, ask my neighbor how I know.
well, you can, in there, you can, I know on the driveways now, you've got it to where you have to put curbing.
Right.
I mean, we can do it, make it to where on the easement side that you're gonna have to put some kind of curbing to keep your water from running onto your neighbor's yard.
Right, because the way I could see something that allows, maybe it's a percentage of a lot line to have pavement up to it that's not driveway. I mean, maybe there's a way to do it that it's like, if you want to put a patio in the back corner of your property,
especially, I mean, maybe that's, you could do that, but I just,
And it might have to be something that we do in concert with the engineering department, such that it gets, the engineering review, so that it doesn't exacerbate any particular drainage issues or problems.
right.
And I think we can, I think there's probably some language that we can come up with that would work.
Yeah, and again, it's one of those things where if you're doing something and you're doing it right, it's not a problem, but somebody who may not do it right, my neighbor put in a basketball court, well, a couple houses over put in a basketball court. It's a very nice basketball court. But if it was right up against the fence, it wouldn't be so
Correct.
ideal.
Right.
Everybody else feels the same way?
Yep.
I say it's worth investigating,
Yeah, especially
finding
like a
a
permeable.
solution that makes sense and doesn't cause too much problems.
Okay.
Aesthetically and engineering.
Okay, the last particular issue that staff wants to bring to your attention is, if you turn to page 711 of the proposed ordinance, specifically paragraph 7.7.6, inoperable vehicles and repairs. Paragraph A, sentence A, inoperable or unlicensed motor vehicles may not be parked or stored in an R district for more than 120 hours unless located within a completely enclosed garage. That's exactly what our current ordinance says. Our property maintenance code doesn't have that 120-hour restriction in it. So in order to be consistent with our property maintenance code, staff is going to recommend that we take out that more than 120 hours so that enforcement action can begin immediately after we find this. And understand, when I say enforcement action, the first notice you get from us is just that, a notice that you don't meet the requirements of the code, and we give you a certain amount of time to rectify that. This particular instance, we wouldn't even be able to notice them for at least 120 hours, which is several days. So staff would prefer that the zoning ordinance match the property maintenance code, and in order to do that, we'd remove the 120-hour stipulation.
I have no problem with that. I mean, knowing how the village, in terms of noticing and then trying to resolve things before ticketing.
And how in the world would you notice 5 days? It's been 4 days. It's been
Well,
3
staff
days.
has to go out and
Yeah.
make a note of it
Yeah,
and then come
exactly.
back in 5
Well,
days.
and right, exactly.
Ludicrous. Yep.
Can we add snowmobiles to that list?
Oh, you put your tiny house in the street.
Actually, I think snowmobiles are,
I called,
Those are considered recreational vehicles.
Yes,
only permitted in certain parts of your property.
correct.
Can't park one in your front yard. So you have to move yours.
I don't have one. But I'd like to go somewhere.
Anything else need to discussion?
Nothing else for discussion, but I do want to let you know that on Monday evening, the village board appointed the Zoning and Planning Commission as the zoning commission charged with holding the public hearing and making a recommendation on the new zoning ordinance.
Okay, so rather than the steering committee
Correct.
as you were initially
Yep.
informed.
So therefore, staff has prepared the notices to notice a public hearing for our regular meeting on January 11th. So that will be, and at this point, that will be the only thing on the agenda, will be the public hearing on the new zoning ordinance. So, lastly, what I wanted to do was I wanted to pass out this study that was just recently released by the Centers of Neighborhood Technology. talks about parking and how studies of the Chicago metropolitan area have shown that most of our residential projects are overparked and underutilized. And actually, Villa Park is specifically mentioned in this document. No, in a good way. The overlay district and the regulations that we created for parking is highlighted as examples of what you should do in addressing particularly transit-oriented types of development. So I just thought I'd provide that to you to read at your leisure. But to me, it's just another reason why Villa Park is 28th best community to live in and the 8th best residential community in the country. So, but with that, I would just like to wish everybody a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and look forward to the public hearing on the zoning ordinance in January.
I would like to wish everyone a Merry Christmas and thank Patrick and staff for, I know the last several months we've had some new and unique topics brought before us, and for being open-minded and bringing them to us and allowing us to at least have a discussion about them. It's good to be open-minded about those things because you never know when an opportunity is the right one.
Correct.
So with that, all in favor of adjournment?
Aye.
All right, we are adjourned.
Merry Christmas.